There comes a moment when you realize this truth. Life isn't breaking you. Your reactions are. You're not exhausted because the world is cruel. You're exhausted because every comment, every tone, every setback has instant access to your inner world. One careless sentence ruins your day. One moment of disrespect loops in your mind. One inconvenience pulls your emotions out of alignment. Deep down, you know this shouldn't be happening. You know life isn't meant to shake you this easily. That's why this audiobook exists, to help you stop giving anything outside of you the power to disturb the calm within you. This is not about pretending you're okay. This is about building a mind, a nervous system, and an energetic field so steady that chaos cannot enter without your permission. Modern suffering has one root: reactivity. You don't just experience life, you absorb it. You assign meaning, weight, and emotional cost to things that never deserved that much power. The good news? If you assigned it, you can reclaim it. Neuroscience proves your brain is rewirable. What you repeatedly respond to, you reinforce. What you stop feeding, you weaken. Your energy works the same way. When you stop internalizing what isn't yours, your field strengthens, your presence rises, and life begins to respond differently. In this audiobook, you'll learn how to stay neutral under pressure, detach from outcomes, stop taking things personally, break anxiety loops, build daily stillness, reclaim your energy, and become emotionally untouchable. This is not theory. This is training. And this is the moment your liberation begins. Not from the world, but from the parts of you that surrendered your power.
If you're ready to rise above the noise, like the video. It tells YouTube you're choosing awareness over autopilot. Subscribe now, and don't miss the next chapter in your evolution. And remember, the deepest transformation belongs to those who stay until the very end.
Chapter 1. Stop giving power to people who do not value you. You begin losing yourself the moment you hand your emotional power to someone who never earned it. Most people do this unconsciously, letting careless words cut deep, letting neglect feel like a verdict, letting the opinions of people who barely know themselves shape how they feel about their own worth. You walk away from conversations feeling smaller, not because the other person is powerful, but because you allowed their voice to echo inside your mind. This is how so much energy is lost every single day. Not through effort, not through work, but through emotional leakage into people who cannot hold it, do not appreciate it, and were never meant to influence you in the first place. The way someone treats you is not a mirror of your worth. It is a mirror of their own internal world, their vision, their beliefs, their insecurities, their wounds. But when you let their behavior shape your identity, you begin living inside a story they wrote instead of the truth of who you are. This is the moment you unknowingly hand them the keys to your peace and let them drive your emotions into chaos. And the tragic part is this: most of the people you give power to do not even value themselves. Yet their voice becomes louder inside your mind than your own. You do not need everyone to see your value. You do not need universal approval. You do not need the validation of people who cannot even hold their own self-respect. When you chase approval, you shrink. You bend. You adjust who you are to fit someone else's lens. You lose your authenticity and then wonder why you feel empty. The more you abandon yourself, the more you cling to anyone who gives you a drop of praise. The more you lower your standards, the more you tolerate disrespect disguised as normal interaction. Your emotional strength is limited every day. It is a currency. Every time you over-explain yourself to someone who isn't listening, you spend it. Every time you try to convince someone who has already decided not to understand you, you spend it. Every time you absorb criticism from someone whose own life is out of balance, you spend it. And by the time night comes, you are exhausted. Not because you pursued your purpose, but because you wasted your spirit on battles that were never yours to fight. This is why one of the greatest acts of self-respect is learning to stop over-explaining yourself. Those who refuse to value you will never hear you clearly, no matter how many details you offer. Understanding you is not their intention. Their intention is to maintain control, to keep the dynamic unbalanced. They twist your words not because you are unclear, but because clarity would remove their power. When you stop explaining and start acting, you reclaim the energy they were feeding on. You prove through your integrity, not your arguments, that you know your worth. Boundaries are the next layer of power reclamation. A boundary is not a wall. It is a definition of what you will and will not allow. When someone pushes against your boundaries, they are not testing the boundary. They are testing you. They want to know if you will collapse the moment it becomes uncomfortable. And if you do, they learn that your peace is negotiable. But when you stand firm, even when your voice shakes, something powerful happens. Your entire energy field strengthens. Your nervous system begins to understand that you are safe with yourself. You are protecting your inner world instead of offering it freely to anyone who demands access to it. But boundaries alone are not enough. You must also examine your own patterns with ruthless honesty. Sometimes you give away your power not because others take it, but because you offer it in exchange for approval, affection, or temporary comfort. If you fear conflict, you may tolerate disrespect. If you fear abandonment, you may cling to anyone who stays even when they bring chaos. If you fear being unliked, you may mold yourself into whatever others expect. These patterns do not mean you are weak. They mean you have been conditioned to survive by minimizing yourself. Awareness is the first step to breaking this cycle. Kindness does not force respect. Patience does not create appreciation. Generosity does not ensure loyalty. When someone has already shown that they do not value you, waiting for them to change is simply another way of giving them control over your emotional state. You cannot transform someone's capacity to appreciate you, but you can transform your capacity to remove yourself from environments where your spirit is drained. When you stop giving power to people who do not value you, your entire internal landscape shifts. Their absence no longer feels like loss. It feels like space. Their silence no longer feels like rejection. It feels like relief. Their opinions no longer feel like authority. They feel like noise. You begin to feel lighter because the emotional weight you carried was never yours. You begin to feel steady because your peace is no longer dependent on unpredictable external forces. You begin to feel strong because confidence, once muted, begins to rise again. Confidence is magnetic. Strength is attractive. People are drawn to those who are anchored within themselves. When you no longer bend for approval, you begin attracting people who respect your firmness. When you stop explaining yourself to those who refuse to understand, you attract people who listen with intention. When you stop tolerating disrespect, you attract people who carry integrity. The energy you refuse becomes the energy you rise above. Rejection is not a verdict. It is redirection. If someone cannot value you, it only means your energy is meant to be placed somewhere else. Life is always trying to move you away from the places where your spirit shrinks and toward the places where it expands. Every time you stop pouring into someone who cannot hold it, you create space for someone who can. Your power returns the moment you decide that your worth is no longer up for negotiation. Chapter 2. train your mind to pause before reacting to negativity. There is a single skill that separates people who remain grounded from people who spiral at the slightest disruption: the ability to pause. Not to freeze, not to suppress, not to run away, just to pause. A moment of stillness between what happens and how you choose to respond. That small space is where your power lives, yet most people never learn how to access it. They react instantly, emotionally, automatically. And because their reaction is unconscious, their life becomes a chain of consequences they never intended. Negativity comes fast. A sharp comment, an unfair situation, a sudden inconvenience. Someone's irritation bleeding into your atmosphere. Before you even realize it, your body tenses, your breath shortens, your heart rate rises, and your mind prepares for conflict. This is ancient wiring, your nervous system reacting as though every discomfort is a threat. But in the modern world, most negativity is not physical danger. It is tone, mood, misunderstanding, impatience, ego. And when you react without thinking, you hand over your emotional stability to whatever or whoever triggered you. The pause breaks that cycle. The pause is a signal to your nervous system that you refuse to be controlled by impulse. It interrupts the old wiring and opens the door to intention. In neuroscience, this moment is called top-down regulation, your higher mind overriding your survival mind. In energetic terms, it is the moment you reclaim your frequency instead of letting external energy hijack it. This is why the pause is not weakness, it is mastery. Imagine someone criticizes you unfairly. Without the pause, anger takes over and you respond from wounded emotion. With the pause, you ask, "Does this deserve my energy?" Suddenly, the entire situation shifts. The comment doesn't shrink you. It reveals something about the other person. You regain clarity. You regain control. The pause is presence. It allows you to see the moment instead of being consumed by it. When negativity hits, you can either mirror it or you can neutralize it. The pause lets you choose. To build this ability, you must first cultivate awareness. Negativity often strikes before you have time to think. That is why the first step is noticing your internal signals, the tightness in your chest, the rise of heat in your face, the clenching of your jaw. These physical cues appear before your reaction. When you learn to recognize them, you gain the power to intercept the moment before it becomes emotional momentum. Then comes the breath. A deep, intentional inhale interrupts your fight or flight response and tells your body that you are safe. One breath is enough to weaken the emotional surge. 2 breaths create distance. 3 breaths return you to yourself. People underestimate breathing, yet it is the fastest way to shift your internal state, because your breath is the remote control of your nervous system. When your breath slows, your mind follows. Alongside breath, questions help redirect your thinking. What outcome do I actually want? Is this worth my peace? What can I control right now? These questions shift your brain from reaction to reasoning. They create psychological altitude, perspective that keeps you from drowning in the moment. At first, you will fail often. You will react before you realize what happened. But every time you remember, even after the reaction, you are training your mind. You are rewiring old patterns. 1 pause becomes 2. 2 become habit. Eventually, situations that once ignited, you will no longer control you. The same triggers will arise, but you won't collapse into them. You will feel the rise of emotion and choose stillness instead of storm. Pausing does not mean avoiding problems. It means you deal with them from a place of power rather than panic. Calmness is not passivity, it is strategy. It allows you to hear what is actually being said instead of what your ego interprets. It allows you to see the situation clearly, without the fog of emotion distorting your vision. It allows you to respond in a way that builds your peace instead of destroying it. Negativity loses its grip on you when you stop feeding it with instant reaction. Most arguments, conflicts, misunderstandings, and emotional wounds are not caused by events themselves, but by reactions to those events. When you pause, you break the chain. You also begin to understand something essential. Not everything is about you. Most negativity from others comes from their tiredness, their stress, their unresolved fears, their own imbalanced energy. When you pause, you see their emotion as theirs, not something you must absorb or defend against. This is freedom. This is maturity. Your environment matters too. If you surround yourself with chaos, your mind becomes chaotic. If you constantly consume drama, conflict, and noise, your nervous system becomes conditioned to expect it. But when you feed your mind calmness, through silence, through grounding, through mindful breathing, you strengthen your ability to pause even in the middle of pressure. Finally, remember that the pause also applies to your internal negativity. Sometimes the harshest attacks come from your own mind. A mistake happens, and your thoughts immediately launch into self-criticism. A challenge appears, and your mind paints worst-case scenarios. The pause gives you the space to challenge these internal narratives. You catch the thought before it becomes a spiral. You choose a better interpretation. You shift your inner frequency. The more consistently you practice, the stronger you become. You begin moving through life with intention rather than reactivity. Situations that once hijacked your emotions become manageable. People who once triggered you lose their control. You stop being a prisoner of impulsive reactions and become the author of your responses. The moment you learn to pause, you reclaim your life. Chapter 3. Refuse to absorb stress that is not truly yours. There is a kind of stress that belongs to you. Stress from your responsibilities, your decisions, your challenges. And then there is another kind of stress, far heavier and far more destructive. The stress you absorb from everyone around you. Most people carry more of the second kind. They wake up already burdened, not because their own life is overwhelming, but because they carry the weight of other people's moods, fears, frustrations, and chaos. Without realizing it, they become emotional containers for the world. A coworker unloads their panic, and your chest tightens as if the problem were yours. A family member calls to complain, and suddenly your entire day feels heavier. Someone messages you in a bad mood, and your energy drops even though nothing happened in your own life. Even the digital world adds pressure. News headlines, online arguments, strangers projecting negativity. You absorb tension because your mind does not distinguish between emotional energy you chose and emotional energy you inherited. The truth is this: absorbing stress is not compassion. It is self-neglect. You were never meant to carry what does not belong to you. Empathy becomes self-destruction when you turn someone else's storm into your internal climate. Caring for others does not mean drowning with them. Support does not require self-sacrifice. Understanding does not require emotional absorption. There is a difference between being present for someone and letting their energy take root inside you. To reclaim your peace, you must learn to separate what is yours from what is not. Stress spreads through resonance. Humans are wired with mirror neurons, cells that reflect the emotions of others. When someone is anxious, Your nervous system responds as if you are in danger. When someone is angry, your body prepares for conflict. When someone is worried, your mind begins scanning for threats. This is why stress feels contagious. Your biology is designed to synchronize with the people around you unless you consciously regulate it. But your energy field, your emotional boundary, is also real. It is the energetic perimeter that determines what enters your inner space. When it is strong, you stay grounded, even when others are spiraling. When it is weak, you absorb everything like a sponge, losing your center with each interaction. Strengthening this field is not mystical. It is psychological, energetic, and essential. The first step is awareness. Throughout the day, pause and ask yourself, is what I'm feeling actually mine? You will be shocked by the answer. That heaviness after a conversation? Not yours? That tension after scrolling through news? Not yours? That sudden anxiety after listening to someone rant? Not yours. Once you identify the source, the emotion begins to loosen its grip. Name it clearly. This is not mine. Your mind listens, your body listens, your energy listens. The second step is to stop giving unlimited access to people who constantly offload their emotional chaos. Some individuals treat your presence as a dumping ground because they never learned to manage their own internal world. If you always listen without boundaries, you train them and yourself to repeat this pattern. You can support them without absorbing them. You can listen without carrying. You can care without collapsing. This is strength, not coldness. Limiting access does not mean abandoning people. It means protecting your own mental health so you can show up with stability rather than exhaustion. The third step is energetic detachment. When someone pours their stress into you, visualize an invisible shield around your emotional space, not a wall, just a filter. Their words can pass through, but their emotional frequency cannot enter. You hear them, but you do not inhale their fear. You witness their chaos, but it does not penetrate your center. This mental image trains your nervous system to differentiate between your energy and theirs. The fourth step is managing your sensory environment. Stress travels fast through noise, news, conversations, and digital overstimulation. If you consume everything, your mind becomes fragmented and overstimulated. You must filter what you allow into your awareness. Not every voice deserves to enter your mind. Not every problem deserves your analysis. Not every emotion deserves your body's reaction. You are responsible for what you absorb. Preparation and worry are not the same. You can help someone think through solutions without feeling their panic. You can listen to someone's frustration without making it your frustration. You can hear bad news without internalizing it as your destiny. This is emotional maturity. The fifth step is grounding yourself in your own energy daily. Stillness, deep breathing, silence, and physical grounding reduce the likelihood of absorbing stress from others. A calm mind is harder to contaminate. A steady nervous system is harder to hijack. A strong inner world is harder to penetrate. Finally, you must accept this truth. You are not responsible for carrying anyone else's emotional state. You are responsible for regulating your own. When you live as an emotional sponge, you weaken yourself and become unable to support anyone effectively. But when you protect your internal stability, you become a source of true strength, present, compassionate, steady, and grounded. Imagine walking through life without absorbing everyone's tension. Imagine listening without inheriting their fear. Imagine supporting without sacrificing your mental clarity. Imagine ending your day feeling like yourself, not like the sum of everyone else's problems. That is what happens when you stop absorbing what was never yours to carry. You return to your center. You return to your power. You return to yourself. Chapter 4. Cut emotional ties to outcomes. You cannot fully control one of the deepest sources of human suffering is the belief that if you try hard enough, care enough, work enough, hope enough, everything will unfold exactly the way you imagine. But life does not operate through force. You can give everything you have and the outcome can still shift in ways you never expected. You can love with sincerity and someone may still walk away. You can prepare with discipline and things may still not go according to plan. You can speak clearly and still be misunderstood. The mistake is not in caring. The mistake is believing that caring guarantees control. You are responsible for your effort, not for the result. The moment you attach your emotional well-being to something you cannot command, you put your peace in a fragile place, outside yourself. This is why letting go is not weakness, it is wisdom. The process is yours. The outcome never is. Most people live in a constant state of tension because their happiness is tied to specific outcomes. How people respond, what results unfold, what timing occurs, how events align. When reality deviates even slightly from the script in their mind, they break. They feel rejected, they feel punished, they feel like life is against them, but life is not against them. Life is simply not obedient to their expectations. Attachment to outcome creates emotional fragility. Detachment creates emotional strength. Detachment does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop gripping. It means you stop believing the universe must obey your timeline. It means you stop collapsing every time something unfolds differently than you hoped. It means your energy becomes stable instead of reactive. When you hold an outcome too tightly, you place your identity inside it. If it succeeds, you feel worthy. If it fails, you feel empty. Your sense of self rises and falls with circumstances you cannot fully predict. This is why you feel drained, anxious, and easily shaken. The foundation you're standing on is unstable. Detachment gives you your foundation back. You reclaim yourself by shifting your focus from what you cannot control to what you absolutely can. Your preparation, your attitude, your effort, your clarity, your choices. These are yours. They respond to your will. They are within your domain. But how people think, how events unfold, how timing works out, those belong to the greater flow of life. You can influence, but you cannot own. This is not only emotional truth, it is scientific. The brain creates suffering when it clings to predictions that do not match reality. It resists what is happening because it is attached to what should have happened. That gap creates distress. The wider the gap, the heavier the suffering. Detachment closes the gap. It allows your mind to be flexible instead of rigid. A flexible mind adapts. A rigid mind breaks. Energetically, attachment creates resistance. It contracts your field. It tightens your frequency. It creates an inner pressure that blocks intuition and flow. Detachment expands your energy. It creates openness. It invites clarity. It aligns you with momentum rather than forcing you against it. Some of your greatest pain comes from demanding that life follow a storyline it has already outgrown. Some of your greatest relief comes from releasing your grip and letting life lead you where your growth is waiting. Think about relationships. You can offer love, honesty, patience, loyalty. That is your part. But whether someone stays, chooses you, respects you, or grows with you, that is their part. If your emotions depend on their choices, you are enslaved to their unpredictability. But if your emotions depend on being true to your highest self, You remain steady even when they choose differently. Think about work. You can prepare. You can sharpen your skills. You can take bold action. That is your part. But whether you get the promotion, the opportunity, the response, the recognition, those outcomes are influenced by countless factors beyond your reach. If your worth depends on them, you suffer. But if your worth depends on your dedication and your growth, you rise regardless of results. Think about dreams. You can plan. You can push. You can show up. That is your part. But the timing, the route, the unexpected turns, those belong to the larger intelligence of life. When you cling, you create pain. But when you trust, life often leads you somewhere better than where you were trying to force yourself. Letting go is not passive. It is powerful. It is saying, I will give everything I have, but I will not collapse if the outcome changes. I will move with intention, not with desperation. I will be guided by clarity, not by fear. I will stay aligned with myself, not with expectations. The moment you release attachment, you return to the present, the only place where power exists. You stop living in imagined futures. You stop fighting reality. You stop exhausting yourself in emotional battles you cannot win. You begin responding instead of resisting. You begin flowing instead of forcing. And ironically, when you stop clinging, outcomes improve. Why? Because pressure blocks your best performance. Detachment liberates it. Because anxious energy repels, calm energy attracts. Because clarity emerges when desperation dissolves. Because you become magnetic when you no longer chase. Imagine giving your best and being peaceful whether the world applauds or stays silent. Imagine loving with depth, but remaining whole even when circumstances shift. Imagine pursuing your goals without fear gripping every step. Imagine standing in a place where life cannot break you because you are no longer defined by what you cannot control. This is the strength that comes from detachment. This is the freedom that begins the moment you loosen your grip. This is the power of focusing on what is yours and releasing the rest. Chapter 5. Break free from the trap of taking things personally. One of the fastest ways to destroy your peace is to assume everything that happens around you is a reflection of you. A stranger's mood becomes your problem. Someone's silence becomes your fault. A thoughtless comment becomes evidence that you are unworthy. Taking things personally is not just a habit. It is a distortion of reality. It forces you to interpret the world through insecurity instead of clarity. And when insecurity is in control, even neutral events can feel like attacks. Most people are not thinking about you as much as you think they are. They are thinking about themselves, their fears, their stresses, their insecurities, their internal storms. But when you take things personally, you forget this. You place yourself at the center of every situation and assume every behavior is directed at you. You must learn to step out of that mindset if you want true freedom. When someone is rude, it rarely has anything to do with you. It has to do with the turbulence inside them. When someone pulls away, it rarely means you are not enough. It means they are dealing with their own emotional weight. When someone criticizes, it often reflects their frustration with themselves, not with your worth. People project what is unresolved within them. Taking it personally means allowing their shadows to shape your identity. To break this pattern, you must first understand why you do it. Taking things personally stems from a wound, a belief that your value is fragile and can be taken away by anyone's opinion. When you do not fully trust your own worth, you search for confirmation externally. Every reaction, Every tone, every expression becomes something you analyze for hidden meaning. You build stories in your mind that have no foundation in reality. Your life becomes a mirror maze of imagined judgments. The moment you begin to build self-respect from within, this habit starts to lose its power. When you know who you are, you no longer feel the need to interpret every behavior as proof or rejection. You stop seeking clues that you are not enough. You stop assuming that everything is about you. Instead, you begin to see clearly. People behave based on their inner world, not your value. Breaking free from this trap begins with a single question. What else could this mean? Someone doesn't respond to your message. Maybe they're overwhelmed, busy, disconnected, dealing with something unseen. Someone seems distant. Maybe they're battling their own fears. Someone criticizes. Maybe they're projecting their own inadequacy. Someone forgets something important. Maybe their mind is exhausted. When you ask this question, you interrupt the automatic narrative that everything is a personal attack. You replace assumption with perspective. Another powerful shift is recognizing how insignificant today's offense will be in time. What feels heavy right now usually becomes meaningless tomorrow, irrelevant next week, and forgotten next year. Your mind magnifies in the moment what your heart won't even remember in the future. This realization shrinks the emotional grip of taking things personally. And yet, the most profound freedom comes from understanding this. Your emotions do not need to respond to every event. Your identity does not need to react to every opinion. Your worth does not need to be validated by anyone's behavior. You can watch someone be rude and remain calm. You can hear criticism and stay grounded enough to decide whether it's useful or not. You can face rejection without collapsing because your value does not diminish simply because someone failed to see it. Detachment is not indifference. It is clarity. It is the awareness that someone's judgment is a reflection of their perspective, not a declaration of your truth. It is the maturity to recognize that you do not need to win every misunderstanding, correct every assumption, or defend your existence to anyone. This is not just emotional wisdom. It is energetic protection. When you take things personally, you open your energetic field to every passing mood. You allow anyone's shifting frequency to penetrate your own. You become unstable because your internal world is responding to external turbulence. But when you detach, when you choose perspective instead of personal interpretation, your energy becomes unshakable. You begin to feel lighter. You begin to see clearly. You begin to rise above emotional noise. Taking things personally also inflates the ego. It makes you believe everything revolves around you, even the negative. But true inner strength comes from recognizing that you are a participant in the world, not the axis of it. People's lives are bigger than the moment they interact with you. Their behaviors are shaped by entire histories you cannot see. You free yourself when you stop turning their actions into stories about your worth. Another important step is strengthening your internal voice. When external voices dominate, your inner voice becomes quiet and reactive. But when you train your inner dialogue to be supportive, honest, and powerful, the opinions of others lose their influence. Someone's criticism cannot overpower your self-respect if your internal voice is louder. Someone's coldness cannot diminish your confidence if your internal voice speaks truth. Not everything deserves your reaction. Not every moment deserves emotional investment. Not every opinion deserves space in your mind. When you stop taking things personally, chaos loses its access to you. You stop bleeding energy. You stop seeking external permission to feel worthy. You stop letting the world tell you who you are. You become anchored, steady, self-led, untouchable. And in that stillness, you discover the kind of freedom most people never experience. The freedom to exist without needing to constantly defend, interpret, or justify your place in the world. Chapter 6. Master the skill of staying neutral in heated situations. When emotions rise, clarity disappears. This is why heated situations feel so overwhelming. Your nervous system reacts faster than your wisdom. Your body floods with adrenaline, your thoughts tighten, and your ego rushes to defend itself. In that state, most people say what they don't mean, do what they later regret, and escalate moments that could have stayed small. The real power is not in winning the argument or silencing the other person. The real power is in staying neutral, calm, centered, and mentally steady, while the storm rages around you. Neutrality is not indifference. Neutrality is control. It is the ability to observe the situation without being consumed by it. It is the ability to choose your response rather than be dragged into reaction. It is the ability to protect your peace even when someone else is losing theirs. In a heated moment, the first battle is not with the other person. It is with yourself. Your own emotions will try to pull you into the fire. Your ego will try to make everything personal. Your body will try to respond as if you are in danger. But if you learn to stay neutral, you break the pattern of escalation. You stop the cycle before it expands. You remain strong while others lose balance. Neutrality begins with awareness of your physical reactions. When conflict appears, your body speaks before you do. Your chest tightens, your jaw stiffens, your heart beats faster. These sensations are signals that your system is shifting into reactive mode. If you ignore them, they take over. But if you notice them, you gain the power to intervene. A single slow breath can disrupt the entire emotional surge. Your breath tells your nervous system that you are safe. Your voice softens, your muscles relax, your mind widens. Neutrality is not about shutting down your emotions. It is about calming your internal system so you can choose from clarity rather than chaos. When someone raises their voice, your instinct is to match it. When someone disrespects you, your instinct is to defend aggressively. When someone throws emotional fire, your instinct is to throw it back. But mirroring someone's emotional state only makes you a reflection of their instability. Strength is choosing not to match their energy. Strength is refusing to be pulled into their storm. To stay neutral, you must mentally separate the person from the emotion. In heated situations, people rarely express truth. They express pressure, fear, insecurity, misunderstanding, or unhealed wounds. When you see the emotion rather than taking it as a personal attack, you can stay grounded. You understand that their outburst is about their state, not your identity. You can think, this is their emotion. It does not need to become mine. This single shift keeps you rooted. Staying neutral also means releasing the need to win. Arguments grow because both people are trying to prove their point, dominate the moment, or protect their pride. But neutrality does not chase victory. Neutrality seeks understanding and resolution. You do not need to overpower anyone to maintain your strength. You simply need to stay aligned with yourself. Sometimes neutrality means listening quietly until the other person finishes. Sometimes it means asking a calm question instead of picking a fight. Sometimes it means saying, let's talk about this later when we're both clear, rather than engaging in emotional warfare. Neutrality is not passive. It is strategic. It preserves your dignity without feeding the fire. Your tone is part of this strategy. A calm tone influences the entire atmosphere. People subconsciously match the energy they receive. If you remain steady, the situation often de-escalates on its own. When you speak slowly, you signal leadership. When you remain calm, you set the emotional temperature of the moment. Your thoughts must also be disciplined. In heated situations, your mind will try to convince you that you are under attack, that you are being disrespected, that you must defend yourself immediately. But you can choose a different thought. This is temporary. I can handle this. I don't need to lose myself to prove anything. These thoughts ground you. They prevent you from merging with the chaos. Remember, staying neutral does not mean tolerating disrespect. It means responding to disrespect with strength, not reactivity. You can set boundaries firmly without raising your voice. You can walk away without feeling defeated. You can express your truth without becoming hostile. Strong people do not explode. Strong people do not absorb. Strong people remain steady. To master neutrality, start with small moments. Traffic, minor inconveniences, impatient strangers, sudden frustrations. Train your mind to respond with calm. Each small victory builds your resilience. Soon, situations that once triggered you will no longer disturb your center. People who once provoked you will lose their power. Your emotional world will become anchored. Imagine going through conflict without losing your peace. Imagine hearing criticism without your heart racing. Imagine being confronted without being shaken. Imagine responding with clarity even when the world around you is chaotic. This is the life you build when you master neutrality. You stop being controlled by emotional turbulence. You stop being dragged into battles you never needed to fight. You stop giving others power over your state. Neutrality is not avoidance. It is emotional sovereignty. It is the calm confidence of someone who refuses to be moved by external storms. When you master this skill, you become someone others cannot provoke, cannot manipulate, cannot destabilize. You become someone who moves through life with clarity and strength. You become unshakable. Chapter 7. Stop feeding your anxiety by imagining the worst case. Anxiety does not come from the present moment. It comes from the future your mind invents. Futures that have not happened. Futures that may never happen. Futures that exist only as shadows in your imagination. Most of the suffering you feel comes from stories your brain creates, not from reality itself. You are not crushed by what is happening. You are crushed by what you think might happen. This is why anxiety feels so powerful. Your mind paints a terrifying picture, and your body reacts as if it is real. Your heart races. Your stomach tightens. Your breath shortens. Your chest feels heavy. Your nervous system cannot distinguish between imagination and reality. When you repeatedly rehearse the worst case, your body becomes trained to fear life, even when nothing is wrong. But here is the truth you forget. The worst case almost never happens. Your mind exaggerates because fear is wired for survival, not accuracy. Look back at your life. How many nights were ruined by worries that never materialized? How many conversations stressed you out long before they happened, and then turned out to be nothing? How many times did you expect disaster only to realize later that you scared yourself with your own imagination? Anxiety grows when you feed it. Anxiety shrinks when you question it. The problem is that most people never question the story. They accept the first fearful thought as truth and let it multiply. One negative possibility becomes 10. 10 become 1,000. Anxiety snowballs into a version of reality that has no grounding in facts. You must stop assuming that your mind's first imagination is the truth. When a fearful thought appears, pause and ask, is this guaranteed? Do I know for certain this will happen? The answer is almost always no, not a soft no, a clear, undeniable no. Your anxiety is not prophecy, it is habit. The brain is designed to prioritize danger because ancient humans survived by assuming threats were real. But you are no longer being hunted. Your fears come from uncertainty, not from actual physical danger. Yet your nervous system reacts the same way. This is why you must train your mind to pause before accepting its fear-based predictions. Another powerful tool is redirection. The mind cannot hold two images at once. If you allow it to replay disaster, your emotions will follow. But you can interrupt this. You can replace the worst case with another question. What if this goes right? This simple shift weakens anxiety because it reminds your mind that the future contains infinite possibilities, not just fear. You are not obligated to imagine failure. You are allowed to imagine success. You are allowed to imagine ease. You are allowed to imagine solutions. This is not blind optimism. This is the discipline of mental balance. Bring yourself back to the present. Anxiety lives in the future. It has no power in the now. Right now you are breathing. Right now you are safe. Right now you can take one small step toward clarity. Almost every anxious thought collapses when confronted with the present moment. The present is real. Anxiety is imagination. You must also understand that people often confuse worry with preparation. They think imagining the worst will somehow protect them. But worry is not preparation. Worry drains you without moving you forward. Preparation takes action. Worry freezes you. Preparation empowers you. Worry keeps you stuck inside imagined problems instead of stepping into real solutions. One of the greatest causes of anxiety is environment. If you surround yourself with people who expect failure, your mind will mirror their worldview. If you consume negativity constantly, your imagination will always jump to catastrophe. The mind becomes what it repeatedly absorbs. You cannot feed yourself fear and expect clarity. You cannot feed yourself chaos and expect peace. You have to protect your mental inputs the same way you protect your body from poison. Write down your anxious thoughts. Put them on paper. You will see that most of them fall apart once exposed to the light. Ask yourself, what evidence supports this? What evidence contradicts it? What is a more realistic outcome? What action can I take today? When you take your fear out of your head and place it in front of you, it loses its power. It becomes a thought, not a truth. Your physical state also influences anxiety. A tired, tense, under-rested body makes fear louder. Movement, breath, rest, and grounding calm your nervous system and silence the noise. Anxiety is not just mental, it is biological. If your body is always in survival mode, your mind will invent threats to match it. One of the most liberating truths is this: you are stronger than your worst-case imagination. Even if something goes wrong, you have survived challenges before. You have adapted. You have overcome. You will rise again. Anxiety shrinks when you realize that even if the worst happened, you would still find a way through. Fear loses its grip when you stop believing that imagined disaster equals actual destruction. Anxiety will always try to visit your mind, but you decide whether it becomes your home. You can acknowledge the thought without feeding it. You can let it appear without letting it settle. You can watch it pass like a cloud drifting across your sky. Imagine how different your life would feel if you stopped rehearsing failure every day. Imagine facing the future with curiosity instead of dread. Imagine stepping into challenges believing in possibility instead of being crippled by fear. This is the strength you gain when you stop feeding your anxiety. The energy you use to waste on imagining disaster becomes energy you can finally use to build your life. When you reclaim your imagination, you reclaim your future. Chapter 8. Reprogram your focus to notice progress, not problems. Your mind is always gathering evidence. Evidence of who you are. Evidence of what your life means. Evidence of how safe you feel in the world. The problem is that most people have trained their minds to collect the wrong kind of evidence. They don't notice what's improving. They notice what's missing. They don't see what's working. They amplify what's broken. They don't acknowledge their progress. They obsess over their imperfections. And eventually, the world they experience is not the world as it is. It is the world filtered through a lens of fear, lack, and dissatisfaction. You cannot create a strong, grounded, peaceful inner world if your focus is constantly feeding your doubts. What you repeatedly notice becomes what your brain believes is important. This is the reticular activating system, RAS, the part of your brain that filters billions of pieces of information into what you consciously pay attention to. If you constantly focus on threats, your RAS highlights danger. If you focus on flaws, your RAS highlights every imperfection. If you focus on what's going wrong, your mind will continuously bring you more proof that life is working against you. It's not magic. It's biology. Your focus is the steering wheel of your emotional life. When you train your mind to notice progress, even small progress, your internal world shifts. You begin to feel capable instead of helpless, strong instead of fragile, growing instead of stuck. But this shift doesn't happen automatically. It happens through deliberate repetition. Every single day, you are reinforcing a mental pattern. You are either training your mind to look for problems or training it to recognize progress. Most people don't realize how biased their minds have become. They achieve 10 things, but obsess over the one they didn't complete. They improve in one area, but fixate on the next challenge. They take meaningful steps forward, but dismiss them because the finish line is still far away. This creates the illusion of stagnation, even when real transformation is happening. Your life feels like it's not moving because you refuse to acknowledge the movement. When you constantly overlook your progress, you rob yourself of the emotional reinforcement needed to continue. Progress without recognition feels like failure, and when your mind believes you're failing, it stops trying. This is how people collapse into cycles of burnout, self-doubt, and emotional exhaustion. Not because they lacked progress, but because they lacked awareness of it. You must retrain your focus consciously. Start by identifying one win each day. Not a perfect moment, not a major achievement. A win. A choice you made that your old self wouldn't have made. A step you took despite resistance. A moment you acted with clarity instead of fear. A negative thought you questioned instead of absorbing. These are the moments that rebuild your self-trust from the inside. Your brain interprets these small acknowledgments as proof that you are evolving. And once it believes you're evolving, it supports you. It amplifies your effort. It reduces your resistance. It strengthens your confidence. Progress compounds when recognized. Progress disappears when ignored. You must also interrupt your mind when it defaults to scanning for problems. If your first instinct is to think, "What's wrong here?" Pause. Ask yourself, "What's going right?" This question rewires your RAS over time, shifting it from threat detection to growth detection. You begin to see possibilities where you once saw limitations. You begin to notice solutions instead of obstacles. This is not delusion. It is balance. Your mind has been unbalanced for years, trained to fear. You are simply restoring equilibrium. Energetically, what you focus on expands. When your attention is locked onto what's missing, your frequency becomes a match to lack. When your attention is tuned to progress, your frequency becomes a match to growth. You draw into your awareness more of what aligns with your internal narrative. This is why grateful, self-aware, grounded people always seem to grow faster. Their focus supports their expansion. Reprogramming your focus also requires changing your self-talk. The mind listens to your words even more than your circumstances. If you constantly tell yourself you're behind, not ready, not progressing, your brain accepts that story and reinforces it. But when you tell yourself, I am improving, I am moving forward, I am learning, I am stronger than I was before, your mind shifts into alignment with a narrative of growth. Your focus becomes a source of fuel instead of fear. Lastly, you must learn to zoom out. Problems feel bigger when you're too close to them. But when you zoom out, you see the trajectory, not just the moment. You realize you're not failing. You're unfolding. You're not stuck. You're in transition. You're not lost. You're learning a new chapter of yourself. The mind that zooms out becomes patient. The mind that only sees the moment becomes panicked. Imagine how different your life would feel if your mind noticed every step forward instead of every flaw. Imagine waking up aware of your progress instead of overwhelmed by what remains. Imagine carrying a sense of momentum instead of a sense of insufficiency. Progress is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, subtle, internal. Sometimes it is a shift in perspective, not a dramatic event. Sometimes it is choosing differently, even if no one else sees it. But if you see it, it becomes real. If you acknowledge it, it grows. If you make it your focus, it becomes your identity. When you train your mind to notice progress over problems, you finally stop living in emotional survival mode. You begin living in growth mode. You begin living as someone who is moving forward. You begin living as the person you were always meant to become. Chapter 9. Detach from daily noise by creating mental stillness. Daily your life is loud even when no one is speaking. The world floods your mind with notifications, expectations, unfinished tasks, messages to respond to, problems to solve, and emotions from other people that spill into your inner space without permission. It becomes easy to believe that noise is simply the default state of existence. But noise is not the problem. The real problem is that you have forgotten how to return to stillness. Stillness is not the absence of life. It is the presence of yourself. Most people never experience their true mind because their mental space is occupied by everything except their own voice. When the external world fills every corner of your awareness, you lose the ability to hear your intuition, your clarity, and your inner strength. Without stillness, you become reactive. You fall into patterns that drain you. You lose track of what matters. You mistake urgency for importance and motion for progress. Mental stillness is not optional. It is the foundation of emotional stability, self-control, and resilience. The nervous system is designed to rest in moments of silence. When it is constantly stimulated, constantly triggered, constantly absorbing input, it overrides its own balance. This is why your mind feels foggy. This is why you feel drained for no reason. This is why small problems feel overwhelming. They are landing on a system that never resets. Creating stillness daily is like clearing the debris from your internal path. Your clarity returns. Your emotions settle. Your thinking sharpens. Your energy rises. And most importantly, Your identity stops being shaped by noise and begins to be shaped by intention. Stillness begins with withdrawal, not from life, but from overstimulation. When you deliberately step away from noise, the nervous system finally receives the signal it has been waiting for. You are safe. You are allowed to rest. Even a few minutes of intentional silence can reset your entire internal chemistry. Your heart rate slows. Your breath deepens. The mind stops spinning in loops. The constant tension in your body releases. This shift is not mystical. It is biological. Your system moves from survival mode into regulation, and from regulation into clarity. Silence is not empty. It is restorative. But the moment you try to create silence, you will encounter resistance, not from the world, but from your own mind. Your mind has been conditioned to crave noise because noise keeps you distracted. Noise keeps you from feeling what needs to be healed. Noise keeps you from confronting the truth of your life. Noise keeps you from hearing the deeper intuition you have ignored. That is why stillness feels uncomfortable at first. But that discomfort is simply the detox of overstimulation. To detach from daily noise, you must welcome this discomfort instead of avoiding it. Begin with simple practices. Sit for a few minutes with no device, no music, no conversation. Just breathe. Just observe. Just allow the mind to settle without trying to control it. You don't need to push thoughts away. You only need to stop feeding them. When you stop feeding them, they lose their momentum. They weaken. They pass. Stillness also lives in nature. Nature vibrates at a different rhythm than human noise. The wind, the trees, the movement of water, these elements regulate your nervous system more efficiently than any technique. When your body enters that environment, it remembers its original pace, its natural rhythm, its grounded frequency. Even a small dose of nature recalibrates you. Writing is another gateway to stillness. When thoughts remain in your mind, they swirl, they echo, they multiply. When you put them on paper, structure forms. Chaos becomes clarity. Your thoughts stop floating and start settling. The weight you felt in your head dissolves because it is no longer trapped inside you. Stillness also requires boundaries. Your mind cannot remain steady if it is constantly invaded. Most of your internal chaos does not come from your own thoughts. It comes from the worlds of other people that you carry. Their emotions, their urgency, their expectations, their negativity, their noise becomes yours because you never shut the door. Saying no is not selfish. It is necessary. Every no is a protection of your inner world. Every no is an act of self-respect. Technology must also be controlled, not worshipped. Your devices are not neutral. They are designed to fragment your attention. Every notification splits your awareness and resets your nervous system into alert mode. Constant stimulation keeps your mind on edge. Silence restores it. This is why setting boundaries with your phone is not a luxury. It is survival. Give yourself protected time in the morning and at night. Let your mind rise quietly and settle quietly. Do not let the world enter your consciousness before you have entered it yourself. These first moments shape the tone of your entire day. Stillness also requires spiritual discipline, the ability to return to yourself no matter what storms surround you. This is the essence of mastery. The world can move, but you remain centered. The noise can rise, but you remain grounded. The chaos can swirl, but your inner frequency stays intact. When you practice mental stillness daily, something shifts. You stop absorbing everything. You stop overreacting. You stop being drained by noise that does not belong to you. You begin to feel a power inside you that does not come from effort. It comes from alignment. Think of your mind like water. When the water is turbulent, you see nothing. When the water is still, everything becomes clear. Stillness is not an escape from life. Stillness is the only way to fully live it. Imagine waking up tomorrow with a mind that feels like spaciousness instead of clutter. Imagine moving through your day with focus instead of fragmentation. Imagine going to bed with calm instead of exhaustion. That life begins the moment you choose to create stillness. Not once, not occasionally, but daily. The world will always be loud, but you can learn to be louder within yourself, not in noise, but in presence. When you build daily stillness, nothing outside can break your inner rhythm. Noise becomes background. Chaos becomes distant. Life becomes clearer, and you become unshakable. Chapter 10. Claim your inner strength and decide what defines you. There comes a point in every person's life when they must face a simple but life-altering truth. If you do not decide who you are, the world will decide for you. Every day, forces outside of you are pulling, shaping, and trying to claim ownership over your identity. People assign labels based on their assumptions. Society measures you by standards that shift constantly. Circumstances challenge your confidence. Failures whisper doubts. Comparisons drain your self-belief. Expectations push you into roles that do not belong to you. If you are not grounded in your own definition, you will spend your life living inside definitions that were never meant for you. Claiming your inner strength is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to who you truly are beneath the layers of fear, conditioning, and noise. Strength has always been within you. You have seen it every time you stood back up after being knocked down, every time you fought through doubt, every time you survived something you once believed would break you. The issue is not a lack of strength. The issue is forgetfulness. Strength is not discovered, it is remembered. The world will try to define you by external measures, status, appearance, productivity, achievements. But these are fragile identities. They shift, they fade, they change with time. If you build your identity on them, you will always feel unstable because your worth will rise and fall with circumstances you cannot fully control. Real strength is internal. It is the identity you choose consciously, not the identity assigned to you. To claim your inner strength, the first step is to stop waiting for permission. Most people shrink not because they lack potential, but because they are waiting for validation. They wait for someone to tell them they are worthy, ready, or capable. They wait for approval from people who may never give it. They wait for a perfect moment that never arrives. This waiting delays their entire life. You cannot step into your power while waiting for someone else to open the door. You must open it yourself. Another part of claiming strength is refusing to let your past define you. Your past can explain where you have been, but it does not dictate where you can go. Too many people turn past mistakes into lifelong labels. They carry old shame into new chapters. They let outdated judgments shape their self-image. They live as prisoners to memories instead of creators of their future. But your past is only a reference point, not a prison. It is a story you can learn from, not a sentence you must obey. The moment you decide that your past is a teacher, not a definition, you reclaim your power. Strength also requires accepting responsibility, not for everything that happened to you, but for everything you choose from this point forward. Responsibility is not blame. It is ownership. It is the decision to lead your life instead of being dragged by it. When you say, "I choose my response," you activate your inner authority. When you say, "I decide what I become," you break free from victimhood. When you say, "This is my story," you reclaim control of your identity. This is where your spiritual and psychological power meet. Your biology responds differently when you take ownership. Your energy aligns differently when you decide your direction. Your mind becomes sharper when it knows your identity is not negotiable. To decide what defines you, ask yourself, what qualities do I want to embody? What values matter to me? How do I want to show up in the world? The answers to these questions are anchors. Anchors that stabilize you when life tries to pull you toward old patterns or external expectations. Choose qualities that cannot be taken away from you. Resilience, humility, courage, discipline, integrity, compassion, clarity, presence. These are the qualities that remain even when everything else changes. These qualities define a strong person because they come from within, not from circumstance. Once you decide what defines you, you must protect it, especially from the inner critic. The harshest opponent you face is not the world. It is your own thoughts. Your inner critic was built from past experiences, old fears, inherited beliefs, and conditioned limitations. It is not the truth. It is simply familiar. But familiar is not the same as powerful. Familiar is not the same as accurate. Familiar is not the same as destiny. To claim strength, you must replace the inner critic with a voice of clarity. Not delusion, not empty positivity. Clarity. I am still growing. I am allowed to progress. I am more capable than I feel in this moment. I am not defined by mistakes. I stand on my own definition. Every time you choose this voice, your inner world shifts. Your nervous system stabilizes. Your energy rises. Your confidence grows. You stop abandoning yourself emotionally. You begin to lead yourself the way a strong person would. Strength also lives in discipline. The discipline to follow through on your promises to yourself. Discipline rebuilds trust within. Every time you complete a task, honor a commitment, or stay consistent, your identity shifts from "I try" to "I follow through." Discipline is not punishment, it is alignment. It reinforces the definition you choose. Another truth you must accept. Strength does not mean avoiding pain. Strength is how you transform pain. Pain will visit you. Loss, disappointment, failure, rejection. You cannot outrun these experiences, but you can decide whether they shape you or reveal you. Strong people are not untouched by pain. They are unbroken by it. Pain becomes a refining fire instead of a destructive one. If you define yourself by resilience, then every challenge becomes evidence of your strength, not your weakness. Imagine living a life where your identity is anchored so deeply that circumstances cannot shake your core. Imagine waking up knowing exactly who you are, regardless of what the world says. Imagine moving through life without bending under pressure, without dissolving under judgment, without collapsing under uncertainty. That is the life you build when you claim your inner strength and define yourself consciously. No one else can do this for you. No one else has the authority. Your identity is your sacred territory, and the moment you take ownership of it, your entire life begins to shift. You walk differently. You speak differently. You carry yourself differently. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces too small for your soul. You begin to live from a deeper truth, your truth. Your inner strength is not something you find. It is something you decide to step into. It is something you choose to embody. It is something you claim fully. Once you define who you are, life can test you, but it cannot control you. People can misunderstand you, but they cannot diminish you. Circumstances can challenge you, but they cannot break you. Because in the end, the only real definition of you is the one you choose. Chapter 11. Become the observer, not the reactor. There is a moment in your life when you finally understand that peace is not created by controlling the world around you, but by shifting the position from which you experience it. Most people live trapped inside their own reactions, swept away by emotion, drowned by thoughts, pushed around by impulses they never chose. They do not respond to life. They collide with it. They are pulled into every conflict, triggered by every tone, shaken by every disappointment, and overwhelmed by every impression the world projects onto them. But there is another way to live, a higher vantage point, a state of consciousness where nothing outside of you automatically becomes part of you. This is the observer state. The observer is not cold, detached, or distant. The observer is aware. The observer witnesses emotion without drowning in it. The observer notices fear without obeying it. The observer sees someone's anger without absorbing it. The observer recognizes a negative thought without believing it. The observer can experience intensity without losing identity. The observer is the version of you that remains present even when your emotions rise, even when your mind runs, even when life shakes. It is the clearest, highest, most awakened part of your consciousness, the part that watches instead of reacts. To become the observer is to rise above the storm without leaving the earth. When you shift into this state, your nervous system stops operating in survival mode. Your amygdala, the threat detector, becomes quieter. Your prefrontal cortex, the center of logic and long-term decision-making, becomes active. Your entire frequency rises because you are no longer controlled by instinct. You are guided by awareness. You begin to respond to life instead of being overwhelmed by it. This is not spiritual theory. This is neuroscience. This is emotional mastery. This is the doorway to inner freedom. Most of your suffering has not come from events themselves, but from the internal storms triggered by those events. You suffered not because something happened, but because your mind interpreted it in a way that wounded you. You reacted before you understood. You absorbed before you evaluated. You personalized what had nothing to do with you. You let your consciousness collapse into the moment instead of rising above it. Becoming the observer is how you break this cycle. Think of your mind like a sky. Thoughts, emotions, and impulses are clouds, constantly moving, constantly changing. Most people identify with the clouds. When a storm arrives, they become the storm. When fear arises, they become fear. When anger arises, they become anger. But you were never the clouds. You were always the sky. The observer is the sky, vast, unshaken, unchanged by passing weather. To embody this state, you must practice stepping outside your reactions. When you feel triggered, pause. When your chest tightens, breathe. When anger rises, watch it instead of acting on it. When anxiety appears, observe what it is saying instead of letting it command you. This small gap, the space between stimulus and response, is where consciousness enters. In this space, you regain power. In this space, you reclaim choice. In this space, you stop being a reactor and become a creator. Energetically, the observer state raises your frequency. Reactivity pulls you downward into survival energy. Fear, defensiveness, urgency, insecurity. Observation lifts you upward into clarity. awareness, stability, presence, and self-command. When your frequency rises, you access your higher self, the part of you that sees truth instead of distortion. Life stops feeling like an attack. You stop seeing others as threats. You stop seeing emotions as enemies. You stop seeing thoughts as truth. You begin to see everything as information. Nothing more, nothing less. This shift is transformational. A reactive person is easy to control. An observational person is impossible to manipulate. People cannot provoke the observer. Chaos cannot trigger the observer. Stress cannot consume the observer. The past cannot imprison the observer. Fear cannot blind the observer. Because the observer sees clearly. When you live from this state, life becomes lighter. You stop taking everything so personally. You stop assuming the worst. You stop drowning in internal noise. You stop replaying conversations in your mind. You stop reacting to every emotional impulse. You begin to move with intention, not instinct. You become the one who chooses your frequency. You become the one who decides your meaning. You become the one who leads your inner world. This is the evolution of your consciousness. From being tossed around by life to becoming the presence that witnesses life. This is how you reclaim your power. This is how you become unshakable. Remember this. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who notices them. You are not your emotions. You are the one who feels them. You are not your reactions. You are the one who chooses whether they guide you. You are the observer, the calm within the noise, the awareness within the storm, the presence within the moment. And when you live from this state, nothing outside of you can dominate the inside of you ever again. When you started this journey, you may have believed your biggest obstacles were external, circumstances, people, timing, pressure, unpredictability, disappointment. But now you know the truth. The battlefield was always internal. Every chapter has been guiding you back to one realization. Your inner world is the origin of every strength, every weakness, every breakthrough, every limitation. Once your inner world changes, your outer world cannot stay the same. You learned how to stop taking things personally, how to keep your peace in chaos, how to detach from outcomes, how to regulate emotion, how to calm your nervous system, how to master neutrality, how to choose focus, how to silence anxiety, how to anchor yourself beyond circumstances, and how to reclaim energy that was leaking from places you never saw. None of this was theory. It was initiation. You have walked through the uncomfortable process of confronting the parts of yourself that reacted, absorbed, collapsed, overthought, and feared. You have learned to stop making your worth fragile. You have learned to listen to your inner truth instead of outer noise. You have learned to build a life from intention rather than survival. You are not the same person you were when you began. Your mind has become clearer. Your presence has become stronger. Your resilience has become deeper. Your energy has become steadier. Your awareness has become sharper. This is not temporary motivation. This is transformation at the level of identity. You have stepped into a version of yourself that is less reactive and more intentional, less overwhelmed and more grounded, less defined by circumstances and more defined by consciousness, less controlled by fear and more guided by clarity. The world around you may not change tomorrow, but the person stepping into that world will, and that changes everything. Because when your inner state is strong, steady, and self-led, people cannot shake you, stress cannot break you, outcomes cannot define you, noise cannot drown you, pressure cannot distort you. Uncertainty cannot intimidate you. You no longer live at the mercy of external events. You live anchored in your own power. You have built a foundation inside yourself that is stronger than whatever life brings. That is the highest form of freedom any human being can achieve. The freedom to remain yourself in any situation. So as you leave this audiobook and step back into your life, remember this. Your inner world is your home. Your peace is your responsibility. Your energy is your currency. Your attention is your power. Your identity is your anchor. Your response is your strength. Carry these truths with you. Repeat them until they become your nature. Practice them until they become your reflex. Live them until they become your identity. Because the moment you choose to lead yourself, truly lead yourself, you become unstoppable. This is not the end. This is the beginning of a new version of you, one who is grounded, focused, intentional, stable, fearless, and unshakable. The world cannot break a person who owns their inner world, and that person is now you. You have become the quiet force that cannot be moved. You have become the strength others will feel without understanding. You have stepped into the power that was always yours. This is your new foundation. This is your new life. This is your inner mastery. And from here forward, you rise.
If something you heard today shifted your perspective, help it reach one more person who's ready for change. And if you want to keep growing with us, subscribe. This space will be here when you need it.